Good evening and welcome to the Top 25 Rundown presented by the Sportscast. Today is August 30th, 2023. If you haven't yet, please subscribe on all your channels: YouTube, Twitter, Twitch.tv, and Apple Podcasts. If you are on Apple Podcasts, please leave a rating and review. It'll help us out tremendously. We are also on DAB Digital Radio. Smart Speaker plays Sportscast. You can visit us on the Sportscast net. Follow us on Twitter, the Sportscast, or after Sportscast. Hello, my name is Wes. Welcome to the Top 25 Rundown, College Football Edition. I'm joined by Tyler Turner of the Turner Cast. How are we doing?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Living the dream. Sorry I couldn't have you on last week, but I had the pleasure. So I decided I'd take a week off for once. This way we could make sure we got to have a talk about college football, and between you and our other guest, Mr. Christopher Carr, West Coast College Football and co-host of the Southern Channel on the Ticket in Pensacola, Florida. I know that both of you are going to have very strong comments regarding the Pac-12. And we seem to have a junior co-host today. Who do we have?
I'd like to welcome Turner Caravello to the show, aged almost 9 months, and he's ready for his first full college football season.
You said his first name is Alan?
Talon.
Okay, that sounds like, wait a second. Okay, for a second, that sounds like I gotta hear what the name is so I can make sure I get it right. But no, I appreciate that name. I appreciate both of you being able to be here. Now, before we jump into, we're gonna have Bob Alvis join us a little later on. One thing I do want to mention, I don't know if both of you saw this, Tyler. We were talking about this before. Nebraska had Memorial Stadium open today, and they had their women's volleyball team have a game there against Omaha. They won 3-0, but the reason why this is important, it was the most attended game in women's sports history. They had a total of 92,003 people there, whereas the most attended women's volleyball match, I saw this on Big Ten Network earlier, was 16,431, and that was Wisconsin, Nebraska. So to see something like that, even before we're going to get into the heavy part of football, that's a heck of a way to start, at least to me. What do you think, sir?
Which one of us?
Okay. The Cornhuskers have always had like some crazy attendance numbers, even though they've been, pretty irrelevant in football the last decade. But I just want to know if it was, do they really have that many women's volleyball fans in Omaha, Nebraska, or was this just some attendance gimmick? But either way, that's really cool. Good for the ladies, and hope it was an entertaining match.
The thing that was funny about that, Chris, is when you go to Nebraska and you try to get a ticket to the volleyball to any of their games, apparently it's the hardest ticket to get at Nebraska. It's easier to get a ticket to go to the football game than to go to one of the volleyball games. So for them to be able to do that, I thought was pretty impressive. Tyler, what's your view on that?
Yeah, I saw it. It's pretty cool.
Okay, and we're now joined by Bob Alvis, doing a master of many different jobs and host of the Sports Buffet. Sir, I appreciate you coming on, and I just was talking about something that's near and dear to your heart, sir. I was talking about Nebraska, the volleyball match at Memorial Stadium. What did you think of that, sir? Did you hear about that?
I didn't. Nebraska right now is probably trying to refine its identity of being a football school. I think they have fallen off on that a little bit, but we don't live in the days anymore either where there were 3 or 4 schools that were on, and there was 1 game a week or 2 games a week that was on. We live in the days of apps. We live in the days of streaming. We live in the days of where if you're a fan of so-and-so, you can see everybody's game for 12 games. So I think Nebraska is just going to have to re-identify themselves as a football interest as opposed to other sports, because the Cornhuskers football is probably not what gets all the Cornhusker people stoked right now.
Okay. Well, yeah, no, the thing was they had the women's volleyball at the stadium today, and they set a record for the women for attendance at 92,003 people. So that was the most attended event in women's sports history. So congratulations then. We're going to see how it goes. And, well, I'm going to let the gloves come off before we make our college football picks. Chris, you just told me you had a story about when you found out that Washington left the Pac-12.
Yeah, so I was recently in Chile with the Navy for a couple of weeks, and out of the blue, well, let me backtrack. So I was in this hat shop getting a custom-made hat from some 90-year-old Chilean lady. She was standing on a stool measuring my skull circumference with some medieval-looking torture device. All of a sudden, my phone rang. Of course, I had to answer it. I really didn't. I don't know why I answered it, but it's my dad saying that Washington had left the Pac-12. So I started, I gasped in horror, said a few foul words, and I'm sure this little grandma was wondering what in the world had gotten into her customer. But got a cool looking hat and a story of how I found out the Pac-12 was dead.
Well, I mean, I like that story. That story makes up for almost anything you're going to be able to say. I mean,
it's a good looking hat too.
That's great. I mean, I think I've seen pictures of it on Instagram. I want to say. So, I mean, I learned how to get sprayed with Lysol last week, wearing a mask and still got in my mouth. So my story's not as cool as yours, but I do understand. Now, Tyler.
Yep.
You and me, we did a show when we were finding out about this. So
true.
Why don't you go ahead and explain your point of view for this? Because I mean, this is going to be the last token year for the Pac-12, but I mean, what happens?
Well, Pac-12's Pac-12's done. Theoretically, all the teams of the Pac-12 have left, except for there's 4 teams, but that doesn't even make a conference. If they come together with some kind of makeshift conference, beat in the Mountain West and AAC schools, it just won't be the same thing. Who knows? Stanford and Cal are talking with the ACC. Maybe they head out there. I've made my comments known. I guess I was not like you. I was not in horror. Will I miss like the old Pac-12 kind of feel, the teams to a certain extent, but I didn't like what was the Pac-12 been doing for the last decade? It's been pretty much irrelevant in college football. They've only made the college football playoffs twice. They signed on to a stupid Pac-12 network that no one watches. Like, I'm an Oregon fan. I got to go watch the first game on an illegal stream because YouTube TV doesn't have Pac-12 network. It's just ridiculous. It's a dumb conference. It's been run poorly. It's been irrelevant in football, and every stupid mistake they could make, they continued to make. And like, even when they were coming to the table about making a meteorites deal, I heard ESPN said something like, "Oh, we'll give you 30 million." They're like, "No, we want 50 million." It's like what world are you guys living in? You have a bunch of schools that no one wants to see. No one likes Cal for the most part. Most people don't like Stanford. People don't care about Oregon State and Washington State outside of Corvallis and Pullman. And you have a couple brands, Oregon, Washington, and USC. And actually, no one watches UCLA either. Do you see their stands? There's like 20,000 people. It's like a morgue when you go watch their games. So It just had shot itself in the foot for the last decade, and the final straw was just, not getting the media rights deal. And then Washington, Oregon made the right decision. I know it's weird because it's like USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington over here, and then the rest of the Big Ten over here. But they had no other choice. The Big Ten is going to be the premier league. Look at all the media rights deal they have with like Fox and CBS and NBC and who knows, they're probably going to come up with another one with Apple or something here in the near future. So financially, future mobility, it was the right decision to make, and it was the one that I was hoping they were going to do. I was going to be really disappointed if they tried to stay in this like pathetic version of the Pac-12.
Yeah, no, I remember when we were on the air and then we were talking about how for the Big 12, how Arizona State, and what's it, Utah, when they jumped to the Big 12.
Yeah.
I think we were on
right.
the air.
It was right after.
Looking at that and just seeing how they were discussing it was pretty different because, well, we expected the commissioner to actually make more of an effort to try to keep the conference intact. But I mean, when you read his press release, you were just like, "Are you kidding me right now?"
Or was it you talking about Kliavkoff? Or you want Mark? Talking about the Pac-12 commissioner? Are you talking about the Pac-12
Sorry, say again?
Are you talking about the Pac-12 commissioner?
I think it was I believe that the press release they released right.
Oh yeah, it's a couple weeks ago. No, yeah, I'm tired. I can't talk. It's a couple of weeks ago now. So yeah, I mean, it was just and it wasn't even his fault. I mean, it goes back to Larry Scott. But they blame Larry Scott. I think it's the presidents of the Pac-12 schools. If you want to be frank, I think the demise of the Pac-12 is the presidents of the Pac-12 schools. I just, they don't take football seriously out there. And you don't want me to riff because I'm like a bunch of dystopian charade of individuals, and they just ran the conference down. And even, I mean, like, for ESPN to come and say 30 million, and you're like, no, we want 50, and just to be so out of touch of where a lot of these brands were, was just such. I mean, look, the Big 12 immediately locked in 31.6 million for their schools. And honestly, there's a lot of Big 12 schools that actually add more value, especially when it comes to college football, like TCU and Baylor. And I mean, obviously now the Big 12 has added Utah. So, I mean, Big 12 actually has some, UCF's had some good years. Cincinnati, they've had some good brands that add pretty good value. And yet the Pac-12 is there balking at that initial offer. And the only couple schools that might have a problem with that is maybe like Oregon and Washington. The rest of them are just, they're not worth any more than that as actually brands and viewers and fan bases and actually products on the football field. So yeah, it's confusing to why they would balk on that deal, but it is what it is.
Unfortunately, yes. Real quick, why don't we jump over to the ACC and Bob, I know that you know you're more of a Clemson fan than Virginia Tech than anything. So how are you looking forward to the year? And if we see the Pac-12 that does two of the teams that are over there decide they want to jump?
Yeah, I mean, to me, and I know everybody looks at football and football rules the roost, but to me, I almost wonder, why are you going to put a Pac-12 school in an ACC, and then you're going to have a baseball game that's going to be played in Stanford between like North Carolina and Stanford, or whatever the case. So that's what I get confused by.
That's fair. That's a fair concern. I do think some of the other sports do kind of get definitely thrown under the bus, like women's volleyball. I mean, badminton really gets thrown under the bus. No, but whoever, baseball, wrestling, synchronized swimming, all really
obviously it's worth it to the conferences what I see happening at some point is the NCAA, college football breaks off from the NCAA, college football rules themselves, and everybody's left to, go by the NCAA rules at that point, which maybe for the best. I don't know. I mean, why not at this point? Because college football is becoming a different league in its own, in my eyes.
I don't disagree with you. That's what should happen, actually. Yeah. Should be its own entity.
4 guys on a podcast are smart enough to say that, but yet not 12 presidents from a certain league or 13 presidents or however many presidents or whoever. I don't understand why other people can't see this.
Yeah, I think it's just I think there's just so much more bureaucratic crap that goes into it because, that seemed to be a simple fix too.
And we're all going to get paid. I mean, like you talked about, with that Pac-12, what ESPN was offering them, everybody's getting paid under that. It's not like, 11 schools are getting paid and 1 school isn't. Everybody's getting paid.
Yeah.
So, and I hate to get off on a tangent, but at what point what's not enough money? I have no idea. But I think college football breaking off and ruling itself and letting, as Tyler said, badminton and synchronized swimming and all those other sports be on their own. I think that's probably the best case down the road, because why do you need North Carolina and Stanford playing in a conference game when your Olympic sport conferences could probably be more regionalized to where you're not having to break your back on travel costs?
Chris, do you have something on this one?
No, I guess I was just disappointed to see over 100 years of history go up in smoke because of someone's incompetence, and that's really what happened. It was just mistake after mistake, and then out west, the Olympic sports do matter. At Stanford, Cal, UCLA, USC, they put more people in the Olympics than anyone else. So to have that be just cleared away, it's sad. But football pays the bills. I think that if the football, NCAA football goes into its own entity, and the other sports are left to govern themselves and finance themselves, that's when it has to change, because if football isn't funding the athletic department like it is currently, the conferences as they stand can't exist. You can't have Stanford go play North Carolina or vice versa. That's just stupid. You just burnt up, a ton of money in travel. So it will have to go regional, and that's how it should be. And maybe we'll get the Pac-12 back in some form, just without football.
That's going to remain to be seen. I am curious to see what's going to happen. But that being said, with the Big Ten gaining these members and the Big 12, how many more schools should we think within the next 5 years possibly could not only join, say, the Big Ten or the Big 12, but the SEC or the ACC, just because, like everyone says, football is the main cash cow. Those have been the conferences where, when you look at the playoff, you don't really look at the other conferences as much. And now with the 12-team playoff, I'm wondering how it's going to completely rearrange the Power 5, because the Pac-12 was definitely going to be one of the heavy hitters. But with, like you guys said, the destruction of it, it's just something that's, it's more just, I guess, trying to see how the disorganized chaos is going to interact and show up.
Yeah, it's kind of hard. I think it's kind of hard at this time to project. Yeah, we have what we have coming up next year. I don't think much is going to change in the meantime, except for maybe Stanford, Cal, and SMU getting added to the ACC. I don't think there's going to be a lot of movement. And at that point, like let's just say hypothetically, Canford. Jeez, I'm tired. Cal, Stanford, and SMU get added to the ACC. You then got 16 teams in the Big 12, 16 SEC, 17 ACC, and you got 18 in the Big 10. I mean, you have Power 4. I think it stands pat for a few years. In 5 years, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I really that'll be hard to predict.
I think as soon as Florida State, Clemson, and let's just say Miami, when they finally get out of the ACC, this is over. It's Power 2. I mean, no one in the Big 12 is on Oklahoma and Texas's level. No one in the ACC would be left would have replaced Stanford, or there you go with Stanford, Florida State and Clemson. And I think that's it. I mean, there's not a lot of dominoes left to fall before you're left with two superpower conferences and just a bunch of scraps.
Okay. Bob, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see people wanting to swallow up the AAC teams or the CUSA teams either, because at some point is your conference becoming, I don't want to say less meaningful, but what's the point? Is the point to get as many teams in the conference as you can? Because I see at some point maybe a 25-team conference. Obviously, you're not going to play everybody the same year. I don't know. I don't know what the point is of that, but I agree with Chris about, when Florida State and Miami and Clemson, when they depart the ACC, then you're into the Power 2, maybe Power 3. But I mean, what could the Big 12 do after losing Oklahoma and Texas? I don't know that you could even rebuild it. So I think you'd have the Power 2, and then maybe like the Mark Wahlberg, Will Ferrell movie, The Other Guys. I don't know.
I like that. Well, why don't we start making a few picks? Let's go for the Pac-12 first, and Chris, I'm gonna let you go first for this one.
The swan song season. The ironic thing is we've been talking about the Pac-12, their demise. This is going to be one of the strongest conferences in college football. It was last year, and I think it's going to also be, the top half of the conference is phenomenal. It's very deep. It's going to be a dogfight to even get to Las Vegas and play in the championship game. USC, I know a lot of people are picking them to go far, and they got the returning Heisman Trophy winner, but that is a murderer's row schedule, especially the back end when I think they got, Notre Dame, Utah, and Washington in, a few game stretch. So I don't see them getting out of that unscathed. They might make it to Vegas, but they're not going undefeated in the regular season. I'm going to let my purple tinted glasses show here, and I really do think Washington, if Penix can stay healthy, we'll find out really quick though. Their opening game is against Boise State. That is no slouch. That is not a pushover game. I'm glad that game's in Seattle this Saturday, and then 2 weeks later you're going on the road to East Lansing to play the Spartans. So we'll figure out real quick if Washington is worthy of all the hype that they've gotten. But I mean, that the 2016 playoff team kind of came out of nowhere. This is a totally different scenario. Everybody's really high on the Huskies, and for a good reason. But I'm going to say, they get through those early season tests, go down to LA and punch SC in the mouth, and get to Las Vegas and win it. Final Pac-12 champion.
Okay. I like that. What about you, Tyler?
Yeah, the Pac-12 is a really good year. You have ton of good quarterbacks in the conference: Bo Nix, Michael Penix, Caleb Williams, Cam Rising, DJ Iguodala, however you say his last name. But yeah, it's a really good conference. A lot of good teams. So I went through and actually I went through and did a skeleton on all the conferences. Sorry, Chris, but I think Washington is a little overrated. They had a good team last year. Michael Penix is very good. They have 3 really good wide receivers, but I don't think they have a lot of depth. They've already had some preseason injuries. They've not recruited that well. So their roster, while they have some really, like I said, Penix and Roman Duzzi and Jalen McMillan and Polk and it's great players, but a couple of them get injured. God forbid Michael Penix gets injured. And on defense, Braylon Trice is a really good player, but I don't think they're extremely deep on all levels. I think they come back a little bit more down to earth. I think they lose to either Boise State or Michigan State. I forgot which one I picked. I think it was Michigan State. And I went through their schedule. I remember I had them going 8-4. I think they drop off a little bit. Utah's another team. Cam Rising's not healthy. He's probably not going to play in the game tomorrow night. I don't know when he will be cleared. He's coming off of an ACL injury. The backup quarterback, I saw him play a couple times last year. He was really not good. Played against Washington State, and then he played in the Rose Bowl against Penn State. Didn't do a whole lot. I think they might drop a few games early in the season. SC has a murder's row schedule, and also once again, if you watch the game on Saturday, they have some defensive issues. They have the players, but I think it's just kind of the culture and the overall program that Lincoln Riley runs. I just don't think he really. I don't think the contact the fits are there enough in practice because kind of the up tempo open offense, and I think it really is to the expense of his defense. They blame it on Alex Grinch, but I actually think it's more Lincoln Riley's program. I think they lose a couple of games because of that. I actually think the 2 best teams are Oregon and Oregon State. Why do I think the Oregon and Oregon State are the 2 best teams? I think Oregon has the deepest roster, top to bottom. I think they had some defensive problems last year, but I think they addressed it very well in the portal. They added Jordan Birch, the from South Carolina, Evan Williams, an all-conference guy from the Mountain West, 3-year starter Tysheem Johnson, Kyrie Jones from Alabama. They added some really good pieces where they needed guys. They still have a good offense. Bo Nix is back. Troy Franklin's back. Both they're really good running backs, and Noah Winningham and Bucky Urban is back. I think that they have the best of both, and they have a deeper roster to go through if some injuries happen. Bo Nix gets hurt. No, they're not good. They showed it last year. They were 9-1. They were going to win that game against Washington, and Bo Nix hurts his ankle as they're pretty much running the clock out. They end up kicking a field goal. He was not able to come back in, and Washington was able to take that game. And probably Oregon goes 11, 12-1, maybe makes playoff. But if Bo Nix gets hurt, no, I don't like the backup situation. But as long as he stays healthy, I think they are a balanced team across the board. And then Oregon State, has a really good program. Bringing a lot of that offensive line back. They last game of the season against Oregon, they ran the ball like 21 times and came back by 19 points. It was ridiculous. And DJ, I can't say his name for the life of me. Whatever the heck say his last name,
or something.
Yeah, whatever. He at Clemson, he was not always. I don't think he worked well in that system, but this was a 5-star guy. This is a talented guy. And a team that plays solid defense, is good on the offensive line. I looked at their schedule. They have one of the most, what's the word I want to use? Accessible schedules. They have one of the most friendly schedules. All their tough games, for the most part, other than like Oregon, are at home. I went through and scouted them out. I had them going 10-2. So I actually have Oregon State rematch in the Pac-12, and I have Oregon winning the Pac-12.
Okay, real quick, Bob, before I have you make your pick. Chris, you look like you wanted to say something when Tara was talking, so you had the floor, Chris.
No, I'm not going to refute anything. I'll let this season play out on the field. Everything he said, if that's the way it shakes out, yeah, Washington has some unproven depth. I do feel like they really do a good job in Seattle at developing, though. So the guys that when they do get their shot, they kind of do come out of nowhere. We have plenty of guys that were unproven, and once they got their time on the field, they've developed into superstars like Trice, ZTF, and some of the other guys. The secondary is what worries me the most. There's a lot of teams out west that can take advantage of that, though. I think we're going to have to outscore a lot of teams, but like I said, it's a top-heavy conference. The top 6, I could see any of those 6 teams making it to Vegas. It's unfortunately, I think the conference is going to cannibalize itself like it usually does. No one's gone undefeated in the Pac-12 for a reason.
Well said, sir. Well said. Bob, your turn, sir.
I always love to pick when you have people that are, one's got a Washington shirt on, one has made his allegiance to Oregon very well known. So I've got to go pick a team that when you think of, I go back to the Pac-10 before it was the Pac-12. And boy, if Utah is not synonymous with the Pac-10, I don't know who is. So even though there might not be any Cam Rising tomorrow against the Gators, Utah's got, I think, a really difficult schedule. But I saw something like where Utah's got like the second best record of anybody since the playoff has started or something like that. So just to be different, for no reason whatsoever, I'm not going to utter the names of Rick Majerus or Keith Van Horn on this podcast. Give me the Utes.
All right, so you're saying they're going to go 3 years in a row. Okay.
I'm probably going to be wrong, dead wrong, 100% wrong. I would not. I would not even bet a penny on what I just said.
They lost the game against Florida last year, and they still ended up winning the league. So it's not like everything's riding on tomorrow. But like Tyler said, if Cam Rising can't play and the pig farmer is in at quarterback, this is a totally different team. So they better they better hope that he's back healthy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get easier after Florida. I mean, the schedule is not set for Utah by any stretch of the imagination to make me look good or even, even semi-good. I mean, this could make me look like a big-time idiot, but I'm still going to go with the Utes. Hey, Andre Miller, too. Let me throw his name out there as well.
Hey, no one mentioned. Hey, no one's mentioned the Bruins. I'm just saying. UCLA kind of has a friendly schedule.
I mean, technically, I still
DTR.
Yeah, they will miss DTR because he was their main offensive weapon at times. There were a few.
I think they've upgraded at quarterback. If you want my opinion,
well, I mean, I hope so. But last year, the way it seemed at times, it felt like he was having to bail them out of jams occasionally.
I think they upgraded.
Okay, hey, you know what? It's fine. I mean, for me, since I still got
eventually, yeah, that kid's going to be a stud.
Dante
I think
Moore.
He's going to start probably pretty damn early this year. And yeah, they could very well have upgraded. And Chip Kelly he's starting to figure things out in Westwood, so they could surprise us all.
Well, since you guys said that, honestly, while I've been sitting here thinking about my pick, while listening to everything that all 3 of you have said, I was wondering about UCLA, and it's almost like I could put basically 4 teams in a hat. I could put Oregon, Washington, USC, or Utah. But since I can't put all 4 in, I'm going to say that I'm going to say USC finds a way to get back there, but I think they're going to choke in the championship game. Just like what happened last year, even though Williams did get hurt. But I think, like you guys said, I think Chip Kelly is going to make it happen this year because he knows that next year in the Big Ten, it's going to be more of a challenge, even though it's going to be a different sort of challenge.
Do you have UCLA versus USC for the Pac-12 title?
I do.
Oh, God.
Trust me, I know
That's
I'm
weird.
100% wrong, but you know what? That is okay, because think about it. For the Pac-12, if it's going to be unique or messed up in any way, USC and UCLA were the 2 teams that started everybody leaving. So how else would it be but to have those two teams square off in the last championship game of the conference?
Man, that makes me sick.
Yeah, that'd be
Well-
that'd be a lame way to leave the Pac-12.
I hope that they're wrong. That and also, I mean, Arizona State, they're not going to be bowl eligible this year. So, I mean,
They weren't going to be anyways.
pretty much.
Yeah.
So we mentioned the 6 good teams, and Oregon State is really good. Let's acknowledge that.
Oregon State is in that top 6.
But the rest are. I mean, Washington State might make a bowl, but man, the rest are. And Colorado's not going to be any good. They might win 4 games, maybe.
That would be a huge success.
Yeah,
I think if they win 3, I mean that's
Arizona State's terrible. Arizona's still going to be 5 or 7. They might even actually be, they might be 7th or 8th best. And then who am I missing? Cal and Stanford are
Cal and Stanford.
Yeah.
Not good. They're going to really be bad heading into the ACC.
And Colorado strikes me as the car wreck that you don't want to look at when you go buy it. But because Coach Prime, with all his toes and his cowboy hat and all that, I just can't wait to see what type of circus, or if it's a non-circus, what type of train wreck, whatever it could be in Colorado, because I just think it's going to be interesting to see it. And the other question I would have is, if Colorado just really poops the bed, does this say that people like Deion Sanders are not the future of college football, and the people that have, coached here and there? Because Deion, to me, is still like the rebel of college football in a way. So that intrigues me.
Okay. Well, did you hear what happened when he tried to get a handshake from Eddie Robinson Jr. after, I guess, Jackson State rambling? How Robinson Jr. said, yeah, you're not even, pushed him away. Said, yeah, no, I'm not going to go for the bro hug with you. Because he called him basically a fraud. And I mean, Jackson State, the 2 or 3 years he's been coaching over there, they made it to the championship game, but they lost the championship game both years.
But coaching at Jackson State and coaching at Colorado is
totally
two different things
True,
in my eyes.
I mean, he has to go against Oregon and Washington and USC. And I mean, these are really talented teams with very good coaches. I think it's going to be rough and I wonder how he handles it. He didn't seem like he's going to handle it very well. He'll probably start throwing guys out of the locker room and stuff. I don't know.
Well, I mean, he got when people wouldn't join in on a fight and told him, next time I see you, so one of you guys get in the fight, the rest of you need to jump in. He literally said that when he saw guys throwing a fit after one scored a touchdown. So, I mean, when you're seeing him do that right now, it's going to be something.
He plays TCU this weekend.
Yep.
And that's not an easy game.
Nope. That being said, let's jump right into you start this one, Tyler.
You want me to pick a conference?
Well, I mean, let's do I'm gonna let you talk about the Big 12. Well, your picks for that?
You want me to pick the Big 12?
Yes, sir.
Oh, Big 12. I'm gonna go with. So I went through. So I've done skeletons for most of these conferences. I forget some of them because I did them off the top of my head. But I ended up, and I don't know why I picked this team. This team drives me crazy. Because you look at them on paper, and they should win the Big 12 every stinking year. But I just think Texas, they just have some really. You have Quinn Ewers, if he plays up to his talent level, is one of the better quarterbacks in college football. Xavier Worthy, that kid. They also got that really good kid from Wyoming. They got a solid Adonai Mitchell guy from Georgia. I mean, they just have some really good players. That Sanders, the 5-star that they got last year, they have the guys that if they play up to their talent level, which they never do, and they haven't for the last decade, I think they win the conference. I somehow figured out a way to have them win it, but I'm not that confident. I had them beating Oklahoma, actually. Had it being Texas and Oklahoma for the title. I think Oklahoma comes back. As you know, if Dylan Gabriel doesn't stay healthy, I think Jackson Arnold, the 5-star, I think he's a super talented kid. That's the future of Oklahoma. And I think Oklahoma has enough really good players to be pretty good. A little worried about them at the wide receiver position. But I'd also look for another if I'd look, I mean, TCU will be solid. They did lose a lot. I don't know if Chandler Morris is quite the level of player Max Dugan. I do think Sonny Dykes is a pretty good program. Their roster has actually gotten better. They're in the top 20 team talent composite today. They actually have a top 20 roster. Outside of that, you know, Baylor could be a dark horse. Oklahoma State usually has a pretty good team under Coach Gundy. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Texas over Oklahoma to win it. But I don't think they're a playoff team. I think it's more of like a 10-3, 11-2 type Big 12 championship season.
Okay. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, on paper, Texas is as good as they usually are. Texas is back for the millionth time, but I think if they are able to get past, you know, early season test in Tuscaloosa, that's a springboard to a special season. And you know, I know they've not lived up to expectations. Sark, I'm sorry, I'm not sold that he can run a program of that magnitude and get to a playoff. But Big 12 is in that weird transition year. This is kind of the last, you know, hurrah for Texas and Oklahoma, and the Big 12 as we know it. So I think Texas has the talent to get to Arlington and play in the title game, but man, I really couldn't pick it beyond, you know, who finishes there with them. TCU is reloading. I know it's a good roster. Dykes proved that he's a amazing coach and, you know, breathe new life into that program. But replacing a Heisman finalist, a wide receiver, a lot of good players. It's going to be tough, you know. And Oklahoma State is always solid. I'd like to see if Baylor can rebound under Dave Aranda. Iowa State, are they going to go back to being a doormat, or is Matt Campbell legit? I mean, there's a lot of questions across the board. Then you got the new members, you know, that are finally in that Power 5 conference for a year. Cincinnati, UCF, and BYU are solid programs. So it's interesting. Like I said, the transition in that conference, teams leaving and teams coming in. Interested to see if some of the new faces in the Big 12 can get there and face Texas in that last championship game with the Longhorns and Sooners.
Okay. What do you got, Bob?
You know, when I'm reading all the talk about the Big 12, and ESPN.com mentions Schrodinger's cat, which to me is a Big Bang Theory reference more than it is a science reference, although I know it's much more science than Big Bang. But Kansas State could be really either good or really bad.
I totally forgot. They're the defending champion. That's totally the dark horse team. My bad. Good call.
So the dark horse is going to come to the light. Kansas State wins the Big 12 for no other reason than Schrodinger's cat.
So back to back.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah. No, that's
everybody lives up in Manhattan, Kansas.
That's actually a decent call. That's actually who my words. I don't know where Chris went, but yeah, Kansas State is actually, because I just thought of it before he said that. They bring back the quarterback Will Howard. They have a very good team, very good coach.
They don't have Deuce Vaughn, but I mean, even still, without Deuce Vaughn, they still
it's a dark horse.
Have enough players. Yeah. That, I mean, Kleinman, he already did very well at North Dakota State as well before he came there, and so I mean, for me, Bob, you took my thunder, sir.
Me and Chris totally. Hey, Chris, we forgot about Kansas State. They're the defending champion.
Yeah. That's sorry, like you said. Manhattan, Kansas. They lost Deuce Vaughn, but they replaced him with Florida State transfer Trayshawn Ward, who I think is a fantastic running back. So I don't think they're going to miss a beat. Klein is a really good offensive coordinator, and you mentioned the success that the coach has had at North Dakota State and now at Kansas State. So yeah, solid pick. I'd have to look through their schedule, but
it's not bad. It's not bad. It's set up pretty good, I think. I mean, always I always worry about road games, but just running down K-State's schedule, Southeast Missouri this week, Troy at Missouri, UCF at home, at Oklahoma State, at Texas Tech, TCU at home, Houston at home, at Texas, which is probably the worry game, Baylor at home, at Kansas, and versus Iowa State. I mean, nothing on there is going to give me hives or keep me up all night. So,
yeah, that's solid.
So is that your pick too, Alan?
That is actually, yeah. Because I had thought about Kansas State just because they are the defending champion. I think what's going to happen is going to be Kansas State against Texas. But I think Kansas State's going to be able to pull it off. They'll be able to do it 2 years in a row.
Wearing purple, that's why.
That's a good call. Yeah. Totally dropped my mind.
So, Bob, I'd like your pick for the ACC, sir.
Well, it's not Virginia or Virginia Tech. I can let that cat out of the bag. It's hard for me to believe in Florida State until I see it's been done. I'm going to have to go with Clemson. I don't know why. I have no logic. I have no reasoning. I know they had some personnel losses. I know that doesn't sound like Fat Boy's going on any type of tightrope whatsoever, but I'm going Clemson. I have no reasoning. No reasoning.
Who do you think they're going to play in the championship game?
I'm going to defer that to one of my Oregon or Washington fans to help me out on that a little bit.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go with the Noles. I think they're going to play Clemson twice. They're going to face them in the regular season, and I think it's like week 3 or 4. It's really early, so get that out of the way. And if Jordan Travis can stay upright, I think they're going to face the Tigers again in the ACC title game. Clemson's still a solid roster. If that new offensive coordinator was it Lincoln Riley's little brother, right, from TCU? Mm-hmm. I think if he gels and does, kind of right the ship on offense, Klubnik pans out. Will Shipley's a really good running back. It's a solid team. So I think this is a very important year for Dabo. I think that if Clemson were to fall flat this year, and it's a couple of down years, it's been a while since they were in a legitimate title hunt. It'd be interesting to see what his approach would be after this.
Fair. What do you think, Tyler?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Clemson. I have them going 12-1. I believe I have them making the playoffs. I think just top to bottom, they have the best roster. I think they made the necessary move at offensive coordinator to bring in their offense had gotten really stale. I think Klubnik's good. Shipley, they're their wide receivers are a little unproven, but they always have good defense, have good defensive players, pretty good secondary. I looked at their schedule. It's not the most daunting schedule. All their tough games against Notre Dame and Florida State are at home. Sets up pretty nice for them. I have them beating. I actually forgot the ACC. It is the top 2 teams. Normally it was the 2 different divisions. This year it's the top 2 teams. So yeah, I probably have them go against Florida State. I do have Florida State losing a couple games early. So Florida State won't be in the playoff hunt because I have them losing to LSU week 1, and I have them losing to Clemson week 4, which will immediately take them out of the playoff. But I think they are able to get back up and make the ACC championship and lose, which the only thing that makes me a little bit have some trepidation, it's tough to beat the same team twice. You saw it last year when TCU beat Kansas State and Kansas State came back and beat them. It's a lot of times tough to beat the same team twice. So I could totally see Florida State coming back and winning that ACC title game, but I'm going to go with Clemson.
All right.
And I'll be a big boy, Alan. I'll pick my own second team. Chris and Tyler were great about it, but I'll be a big boy. Clemson, North Carolina. May's good. May's real good. And I don't know that he can carry them, but, everybody in the ACC, I don't know that anybody in the ACC out of what we've named has what I would call a strong conference schedule, because it's not a strong conference. If you play one of the top two, that's a strong conference schedule. But, the only blip on North Carolina's schedule that I looked at is they actually have to go to Clemson. They get to avoid Florida State altogether. Special things could be happening in Chapel Hill, although it does concern me when you have an AARP member as the head coach, although you cannot argue with what Matt Brown has done.
They lost some stupid games last year. Yep. Like the one to Georgia Tech, like what in the world? But yeah, man, Drake May is legit. That guy is awesome. It's fun to watch. But they got a tough one, man. They're playing South Carolina right out of the gate. They better win that game.
Thing about North Carolina is they have no defense, and some of their better defensive players transferred out. They just have to learn how to stop a cold. I mean, until then,
North Carolina should have joined the Pac-12 because they play like a Pac-12 team, like of a few years ago. Just all offense, no defense.
Yeah,
just a mess on that side of the ball.
And they lost their offensive coordinator too. He went to Wisconsin.
Yeah, it was in Wisconsin now.
So,
which is crazy. We haven't even talked about that yet.
Yep. Well, that's why we're going to jump over there and to the Big Ten in a second. But I'm going to play devil's advocate in the fact that I'm going to say that Clemson doesn't make the ACC championship game. I'm going to say Florida State and I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm going to pick Miami.
What?
Yes.
Based on what?
I think Cristobal is going to get it together this year compared to how it was last year. The dumpster fire that was last year for them.
So how's he going to get it together?
He's had a year to
fire everyone?
Fire. That's what I'm saying. Fire both coordinators.
Pretty much, but I think he's going to do better this year. And I think this is going to be because after how last year went, he needs a good year.
Oh, I know he needs one, but I'm just. So he who wins the ACC?
Florida State.
Okay.
I'm gonna pick Florida State to win. I'm not picking Miami to win. I'm not that crazy. Come on now.
Okay.
I have my moments, yes, sir. But even with my moments, I'm not gonna go completely off the edge for picking somebody that. I mean, it's bad when I see Chris go like this.
Yeah, I usually keep a good poker face on this show, but I couldn't hold it together when you said Miami.
I mean, Miami's brave. I mean, they do have some talent. They do have a top 15 roster if you just go by like blue chip numbers, but that's gonna be a pretty remarkable turnaround and firing a whole staff and bringing in a whole new staff. We'll see.
Well, I mean,
I wouldn't bet it.
You know, the only way I think Miami becomes really super successful again if they become the U. And in today's age and culture, I don't see how that happens. I have a vivid imagination, but not that vivid.
Okay. All right, so let's jump to the Big Ten since we just had that shocker. And well, Chris, I'm gonna let you go first because since you were just talking about how the offensive coordinator from North Carolina went over to Wisconsin to join Fickle's staff.
Yeah, man, that's a good hire. That's a really.
I'm very upset about that hire. Actually,
it's a different approach for what we've come to expect out of Wisconsin for forever. You know, it's not going to be Ron Dane running the ball 50 times. It's Phil Longo. But they did keep it on the ground pretty good. That COVID year with Michael Carter and I forget the other running back, they had 2 1,000-yard rushers with Sam Howell at QB. So it's a good offensive approach, a modern college football approach. But the Big Ten, it comes down to two things. Is Ohio State going to rebound with the quarterback position, and is Penn State going to take the next step, finally take that next step, and beat either Michigan or Ohio State with a Lar at quarterback? I think those two positions on those two teams is really going to shake the rest of the conference. No matter what, though, I think Michigan is going to be there in the title game, and they're going to win it and get back to the playoff for the third straight year. I think they're just too entrenched now, with a really good roster, and JJ McCarthy coming back at quarterback. I think the Wolverines, this is a good year for them. But beyond them, like I said, there's a lot of questions, and I don't think Ohio State's going to be this juggernaut they've been, because I don't think they're going to rebound flawlessly at quarterback. But I think Fickell's staff at Wisconsin, it's going to be they got Mordecai came over from SMU, really good quarterback. So that could be a instant offense, and the Badgers can make some noise, first time in a while. And everything else, like, we'll talk about the rest of that conference and the additions they're making with the Pac-12 teams coming over there. The rest of that conference, beyond like the four that we just talked about, is bad. That is a bad bottom half conference with some of the worst college football teams in the country. Here's looking at you, Rutgers. So yeah, let me just throw that out there.
Fair enough. I mean, it hurts me to hear that, but who's Michigan going to play in the Big Ten championship game?
Oh man, I'll say Penn State. Like I said, I think they're ready to take a step forward finally.
They can't play them. They have to play someone in the West.
Is it still divisions?
Yep. Last year.
That's stupid. All right.
Wisconsin?
Yeah, give me Wisconsin. Let's go.
All right. What you got, Tyler?
So I'm actually good. Well, I'm agree with you and slightly agree and slightly disagree. So I think the Big Ten, yes, they have some horrible bottom conference teams like Rutgers, who obviously probably should be relegated to the group of five. But the middle of the conference, Minnesota, Illinois, Purdue, Iowa, are tough teams. And at any time you go into Kinnick Stadium, look how many good teams they knock off. Whether it be Penn State, Ohio State, I mean, Michigan, how many hearts they've broken on us on a Saturday night. Illinois, last year probably should have won that game. Probably should have beaten Michigan the game before they played Ohio State. So there's some tricky teams in that middle of the road. And then Michigan State going to bounce back? They were 11-2 only 2 years ago with a victory over Michigan. So I do think it's a big three, and I'm going to go a little bit shocker here. I think Penn State wins the Big Ten. If you saw the Bruce Feldman Freaks list, Penn State had more guys in the Freaks list than anyone else in the country. They had 8 guys. They have some legitimate guys on defense. They have 2 of the best running backs in the Big Ten, and they have the highest upside quarterback that they've had in years in Drew Allar. I think they take advantage of it. I think it's a year that I do think they lose one game. I think they lose Ohio State, but I think they beat Michigan at Penn State. I think they're able to get to the Big Ten title game. I think they beat Wisconsin, who, yes, I think Wisconsin's going to be pretty solid with Tanner Mordecai and the new offense, and Luke Fickell's a great coach. I do think Michigan's good too. I think Michigan's only lost to Penn State. I think Ohio State actually loses a couple games. I think they lose at Notre Dame because I think Notre Dame's pretty good this year. And I think Ohio State loses to Michigan. So give me Penn State or Wisconsin.
All righty, Bob. What do you got?
Same. Penn State and Wisconsin. I think Penn State comes out of it. It's kind of a heart pick with me because One of my former good friends, I didn't disfriend him or defriend him, as they say. He actually went to my high school, co-defensive coordinator at Penn State, great recruiter, and Anthony Poindexter. But, I almost wonder if Penn State goes south, is James Franklin on the hot seat, just because this has been talked about before. I get Penn State's had great records and everything like that, but I think that's one of the more unrealistic fan bases. I don't know buyouts or anything like that for Franklin, but I just wonder. The other side of the Big Ten, I think Wisconsin should get out of there, but Iowa for some reason scares me. I mean, you could see good Iowa, you could see bad Iowa. I don't know, but I'm going to go Penn State, Wisconsin for really no logical reason.
Okay.
I don't come with logic. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here for my good looks.
Throwing stuff out there.
Yep. So for me, well, I should root for other teams, but
Here it comes.
I'm going to say that Ohio State's going to come back this year. They're going to beat Michigan, and they're going to win the Big Ten.
And they're going to win the Natty too, aren't they? In your opinion?
I would hope they would. I'm not going to say that they're going to do that, but since you want to say that, I did pick the coach that got fired last year, sir. I picked Scott Frost. You know what? The coach that I think, as much as Bob, I like how you're talking about James Franklin leaving. I would say right now it's between him, Jimbo Fisher, and Mike Locksley in Maryland.
Well, I think the top two with Franklin and Fisher, I think there's quite a bit of a gap to Locksley, and I don't think anybody would care if Mike Locksley fell in the forest.
Exactly.
Would it make a sound?
Nobody cares.
Probably not.
Nobody would care.
Jimbo Fisher, I think, and Franklin would, I don't know, teeter the totter, so to speak, the old seesaw reference. That's a lot of buyout for Jimbo Fisher, by the way. I get that you got money, but that is a lot of buyout from what I hear.
James Franklin's not getting fired after he makes the playoff.
There we go.
Yeah, I mean, if he makes
got extended recently.
That's right there when people get extended.
A year or two ago. Isn't he extended like 2028 or 2030 for Franklin?
Yeah,
well, he might leave for years. He might leave for USC after Lincoln Riley heads to the Dallas Cowboys' new job opening.
And I'm not saying Franklin should get fired, and I'm not saying he would get fired. And I think Tyler's probably right that Franklin would probably leave for somewhere else before getting the axe. But, there's unrealistic people in all corners of the world. And there are a lot of unrealistic people probably with a lot of money in Happy Valley. But I don't think Franklin gets fired. Could the seat get a little toasty? Maybe. But, I think when seats get toasty, there are options that have to happen before you get the axe.
Okay, fine. Instead of Franklin, then I will say the coach in Indiana.
Oh, he's fired.
I say he'll make it 5 games, maybe.
That's another bad program. Throw them with Rutgers. They're like Chris said. There's a couple Big Ten teams that are.
True. Well, I mean,
they should not be getting the media rights deal.
and if you're Indiana, I don't know that you're going to find anybody better than Tom Allen because who wants to go to Bloomington to coach football?
Well, they did just sign a $65 million media rights deal.
Yeah,
probably.
I happen to like Bloomington. It's a cool town. I went there.
Well, I don't think Tom Allen is garbage in terms of the college football coaching ranks. I think there are a lot of people that probably should get axed before him. But my thing is, if you're going to fire somebody, who are you going to get? And I'm sure that you guys could go over a lot of names that could go to Indiana. But is that the biggest need on the list of Indiana right now to fire your football coach? I don't know. And you bring up a good point, Tyler, with the media rights. Good point. But I don't know.
The best part with the media rights are going to see it front and center on Saturday with Ohio State having the 3:30 game against Indiana on CBS.
And
so that's going to be something.
A terrible game.
It is. It is. We should win by 4 touchdowns, I want to say.
Should win by 10 touchdowns. That's not a good football team.
True, I was trying to make it at least sound like it was more legitimate. That's what it was. But I mean, there shouldn't be much of a game. So we're gonna see how that goes. But Ohio State, I think they're gonna beat Iowa, and then yes, Tyler, I know it's gonna surprise you. I do think that they will win it all this year, but we'll get to that later on. We'll get to that later on. So
don't even make the playoff.
You know what? If they don't, it would be a shame, but I wouldn't be completely surprised. Now, before we jump into the SEC, I do want to mention that this will be the first year at Mississippi State since Mike Leach died. So, rest in peace to him, and I know that they're going to miss the Pirate, and I'm curious to see what happens there. That being said, Tyler, who do you pick besides Georgia?
Who besides Georgia?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody.
Well, I mean, they have to play somebody in the championship game.
They play LSU. Georgia versus LSU. Georgia wins.
Okay.
Georgia wins the Natty. Three-peat.
You know, that is possible. I mean, me being an Ohio State fan, that Marvin Harris.
It is really hard. It's really hard to three-peat. It's really hard to two-peat. That does worry me a little bit. I don't know. I might have to dwell on that one. But yes, Georgia, I do pick to win though. SEC.
I would not be surprised.
Over LSU, yeah.
Okay. Who do you got, Chris?
Yeah, until proven otherwise. I think they're gonna miss Stetson Bennett, but man, the team is just so much head and shoulders above everyone else in the East. They're definitely gonna make it to Atlanta, and I got them against LSU. I think Alabama. No one is making a big enough deal about that quarterback situation, and I just don't think that you can trot anybody out there these days and just be a game manager. That's just not how it's done. So I think that it's going to be the Tigers and the Bulldogs. I mean the Dogs again.
Okay. Bob, who do you pick?
I mean, isn't it obvious? Vanderbilt and Arkansas. I mean, if the SEC title game isn't screaming Vanderbilt and Arkansas, why are we all here? I'm going to go with Georgia and LSU as well, and Georgia wins.
Well, I'm picking one of those teams if all of you have picked. I'm not picking both those teams, though. I'm gonna throw an arrow in the dark, and I'm gonna pick South Carolina.
Okay,
that's just silly.
Shane Beamer.
Yeah. That's just. If you're right about that, okay, then I'll give you.
I thought about.
I will Venmo
saying
you
something crazy, but
I'll Venmo you $500.
I'll chip in a few bucks so Tyler doesn't have to take the whole thing on himself.
Yeah,
that's just not happening in Planet Universe.
I thought about saying something crazy like that, but then I was like, how could I defend that? Like, what could I say to possibly justify that?
I will put it with 2 words: Spencer Rattler. Okay. I think that with how he is at South Carolina, I think that you could see how at the end of last year he was starting to turn things around being the quarterback there. I think he's going to build on that, and they're going to have one of the best seasons there they've had in a while.
And who's Georgia losing to?
South Carolina.
And who else?
Hopefully Ohio State. I mean,
so they make the playoff?
They do.
Does South Carolina make the playoff?
No. They make it to the SEC championship game, but they lose to Georgia.
They're in the same division.
Same division.
We still have divisions in the SEC, right?
You just said you picked one team, so you must have picked LSU. But so I'm all confused now. Because we all said LSU, Georgia, and you said, I'm going to pick one team that you guys picked. So I was assuming after you said South Carolina, it'd be South Carolina versus LSU.
Does South Carolina play Georgia this year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Week
3.
At Georgia. And I'm feverishly looking up the last time Georgia's lost a home game.
Well, it's okay. I admire you trying to play devil's advocate, but I don't think you thought it out at all.
I was going to play devil's advocate on the West.
Now suddenly they're winning the East. They're playing Georgia, who's in the same conference, and Georgia's making the playoff. So I don't know if you've thought it out. So do you really think that South Carolina, have you gone through their schedule and you have them winning the East?
I say stick to your guns, Alan. Don't let yourself get bullied.
Well, he has to logically. He said the problem was
I know.
He said they're going to beat Georgia, and that's not possible in the SEC. They weren't going to replay each other in the SEC championship. So,
hey, this is in week 3 that they played at Georgia. So
South Carolina has to play UNC the opening week. So we'll probably see how good they are because UNC at least has a good offense. Week 3 they play Georgia. Week 5 they play at Tennessee.
Week 7.
Week
do you know
7,
Georgia's last home loss?
South Carolina.
South Carolina, yeah. Week 7, South Carolina has to play at Texas A&M. They have Clemson the last week of the season. They have a genuinely pretty difficult schedule. Like I wouldn't pick them to be any better than like 7-5, 8-4. But
I'm gonna shock the SEC. I'll pick South Carolina against LSU.
And who wins?
You're right.
I think LSU will win. I think that Brian Kelly's gonna actually have a chance to make the playoff and have a team week where he would be able to win with. Now, if it doesn't happen, you know what? That's okay. You guys will be able to laugh at me for the whole year and then some, but that's okay. If we don't make big guesses, we're not doing something right. Because, I mean, no matter what we pick, at times, we're going to find out later on, one of us is right, one of us is wrong. And I'm okay with being wrong, but I'd rather make a different statement and throw it out there so that if it does happen, somebody can say we called it. So that being said, who are your 4 playoff teams, Tyler?
So I changed it, and I've done this, I think, last 4 years, the college football preview. Like I go in and one team is never on there, and then I jump on the podcast and do my predictions, and they somehow end up on there. I'm gonna have you guess which team that is.
Probably Ohio State.
No.
Kansas State.
Nope. Oregon.
Right,
Every year I don't have Oregon when I actually do the skeleton of their schedule, and then I just get really hyped on the podcast, and then I'm just have to go for it. So I have Georgia, Penn State, Clemson, and Oregon. I have Georgia and Clemson playing each other. Georgia wins. Penn State and Oregon. I want to pick Oregon, but I'm actually going to pick Penn State. I have Georgia versus Penn State, and Georgia wins the national title. I don't love picking Georgia winning it for the 3rd time, but can I see Penn State winning a national title? I don't know. I actually do think Penn State's a really good team, but I'm gonna go with Georgia. It's kind of lame. Whatever.
Chris, who you got?
Okay. I do have Georgia making it. I do not have them winning it. I said Michigan was going to make it. My other 2 teams, actually, I don't have 4 teams. I got 3. And I think Washington's going to win the Pac-12 and make it So yeah, call me a homer, but we're going out in style, baby. Winning the last ever championship of the Pac-12, and we're gonna make it all the way to the playoffs. But some solid teams, man. So I think this is Michigan's year to finally win a playoff game, and they're going to go all the way and win the national championship. There's the last team that made it even a possibility of going a three-peat was USC, and they lost that epic game to Texas. I'm sorry, you can call me old man, whatever, but this Georgia roster, as good as it is, this is like when people bring up the 2001 Miami Hurricanes. Like, I'm sorry, 2005 USC would smoke this team. So I don't see them being the one that finally three-peats.
Fair enough. Who beat the 02 Hurricanes?
Ohio State.
Craig Krenzel, the worst national champion we've crowned in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, hey, that's why he went to med school. I mean, he still played in the NFL for a little bit, but he went to med school.
God.
Trust me,
Good.
I remember that I'll never forget that game. So, but it's still that was something. So, I hope you're wrong for that pick, Chris. But you know what? We'll see what happens. Bob, who you got in the playoff?
Georgia, Penn State, LSU, Clemson. Penn State beats Georgia in the national championship game.
Wow. You see, I wanted to do that so bad. I just couldn't do it.
Do you know why I did it? Because you picked Georgia over Penn State, and I didn't want to be a copycat again.
All right, that's solid. That's solid picks.
Yep, although mine are going to be bad, but that's okay. I'm going to pick LSU, Ohio State, UCLA, and I'll go Clemson. I think it's going to be Ohio State and LSU in the national championship game. And I think Ohio State's going to beat LSU.
Man. Okay.
UCLA.
That's a fun playoff, man. I mean, it'd be pretty weird, but.
So we're pretty split. So we have Georgia, Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan. I like Penn State and Michigan. I don't. So three of us have Big Ten. Okay. Big Ten's deciding to go out on top before they go get bigger and badder.
Yeah, that's a solid team, man.
I mean, we picked out of the top echelon of the Big Ten, we picked 3 out of the 4 of them. See, while I want Ohio State to win, it's more just not having Michigan win. So I'm going to be like that bandwagon where they say anyone but Michigan. But I've trained my daughter to where she's a diehard Ohio State fan. So when we lose, well, her mother is a Michigan fan. So we have enjoyed many conversations the last 2 years. So I'm trying to hope that streak will end. Now, if Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards are able to run like they did last year, we're going to be in trouble. I openly admit that. But I want to see how it goes. And either way, I think that this year for college football, NCAA college football game as well. I think they're bringing that back within a year or two. So, just so we can see how it goes. But, gentlemen, I appreciate the time. I know it's getting up there. Now, if we were going to try to find you guys outside of here, Tyler, how would we do that?
At the Turner Cast.
All righty. How about you, Chris?
At Nullcore on all social media platforms.
There we go.
Instagram,
There's that
Facebook, and Twitter.
There's that hat. I was waiting for that hat, sir. There we go.
I just want to say I will be attending the Apple Cup this year. This is probably it.
Nice.
Got my tickets.
Awesome.
That'll be fun.
Well,
Last time.
Baby's first football game too.
That is great.
I really wonder what all the Chileans think of conference realignment after the reaction of Washington leaving.
That would be something interesting to try to find out.
Well, I ain't going to Chile to find it out. It ain't in the budget right now.
Yeah.
So
on the Pac-12's budget.
That's for dang sure. But Bob, how do we find you on social media?
Go to the Sports Buffet on Twitter if you feel.
Okay. Well, fellas, I appreciate the time. Thank you for coming on. Hopefully we'll be able to have all you guys come on later on in the year too, and probably try to figure out some of those picks probably within the next few weeks, as long as you got some time.
No, I'll pick some today. I mean, not today. Well, it actually is today. It's 12 o'clock right now. So actual later today, I'll go pick up 5 games. Probably like Utah, Florida, TCU, Colorado, South Carolina, North Carolina. Those are some of the better games this weekend. It's LSU, Florida State. Actually, it's not that great of weekend other than the LSU, Florida State game. I mean, like Boise State, Washington, South Carolina, North Carolina. Those are decent games, but it's not a rock star. But LSU, Florida State's a great game, so that'll be fun.
True.
Who do you guys got? Yeah. Who do you got for that one?
I got Florida State. I think LSU missing Mason Smith, FSU staying healthy enough, getting Lovett for the defensive line. I think the Noles take it 2 years in a row.
LSU, I can't bet on Mike Norville in big games quite yet.
No, I mean, he's got a lot of left to prove on offense. Don't be calling any stupid goal line plays if I were him.
LSU.
I would pick Florida State, but I think LSU is going to take it. And it would kill my pick otherwise. But one last question for all three of you. Is Coach Prime going to start the year 1-0 at Colorado?
No.
I think they lose like 42-17. That's a good TCU. That's a good TCU team.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I figured, but I wanted to make sure I asked you guys that question beforehand. But yeah, we'll definitely get you guys back on later on in the year. Thank you for the time. This has been the Top 25 Rundown on Sportscast. The Jersey Boys will be on tomorrow or later on today. Everyone have a great night. Thanks for coming on.